Right now, we're part of London Climate Action Week, and Climate Action is producing this 3 days of the forum. And we're now joined by Nick Mabey, who is Chief Executive of E3G, who are running the London Climate Action Week. Nick, we've invited you in because, first of all, to thank you for inviting us to do this, but secondly, really to say what kind of impact do you believe London Climate Action Week is having, even in this virtual form, Action Week number 3?
Yes, it's our third London Climate Action Week, and really it was set up in response to the type of things you've just been talking about, which is solving climate change requires changing the whole global economy and institutions in 3 decades globally at the same time. To do that, we've got to collaborate together, learn together, work together so much better. London has more people working on climate change globally than any other city in the world, over 450,000 people. But they're fragmented, they're not working as strongly together. And we founded London Climate Action Week to try and bring those people together to up the pace, to up the challenges and working on the challenging issues. And we feel that, this year we're seeing action from around the world. We're seeing people talking about African development. We're talking about COP. We're seeing some really tough discussions, which I'm really pleased about the integrity of corporate commitments. So not just clapping people for making announcements on net zero, but what do they actually mean? So I'd say after 3 London Climate Action Weeks, we're starting to get into the grit of how do we make this event and this city a real motor for global climate action, not the easy bits, but the tough bits and the pace, which we need even more of in this critical year.
What evidence do you have of communication, of people talking to each other as a result of 3 days of this, for example? We're talking about 10,000 stakeholders who are watching this. You couldn't get them into a hotel ballroom. So what you're doing is developing something much bigger elsewhere.
Exactly. So one of the really exciting examples this year was the first London School Summit, which grew out of 2 years of different education networks, primary, secondary, tertiary, coming together. This year they held their first major summit, which actually brought together virtually every initiative around London's 24,000 schools and higher education sector to say, okay, the mayor said we're going to be net zero by 2030. What's our role? Actually, schools are the largest carbon producers for London councils, so the biggest carbon footprint just in their buildings, let alone food, and education is a huge sector. So that's the type of thing we're looking. One of the other ones this year, we're launching an international charter for professional groups. So everybody from architects to accountants to engineers, what's their role in net zero and what can they commit to? Because they are the DNA of the economy. And London, again, is host to huge numbers of global networks. They define what university courses get you accreditation. They define what further training different professionals have. So yes, those are some of the things we're starting to see come out of what is honestly a concerted attempt to make people work together better, which is often not easy because people have their own drivers and don't necessarily want to go out of their normal bubble.
What are you learning, Nick? What did you learn from 24,000 schools discussing this? Because are you amazed at how well informed the next generation is about the city they're living in and what they face and what's coming down the track?
I think a couple of things. Firstly, the generational difference is huge. And really, but they don't know their role. So they feel the pressure, but they don't know. I mean, even simple things, green jobs. People think a green job is fitting a heat pump. That's true, but it's also doing detailed climate risk analysis for Morgan Stanley. So the connection between the young people in this city, for example, and the hundreds of thousands of green jobs being created in the City of London, in the insurance industry, in the engineering industry, not there. So that's one connection. The other one that was very clear is that some boroughs are doing amazing work getting money out of the private and public sector to refurbish their schools, for example, or build refurbished houses.
In a sustainable way.
In a sustainable way. Others are not doing so well. So again, even in a single place like London, which is so packed, the differences between best and worst practice are enormous. Now, multiply that to the whole world. The lesson is we need to work so much harder to spread best practice rather than people sitting in their own silos doing their own thing and congratulating themselves. Because, like COVID, no one's safe till everybody's safe from climate change. So you can have the best refurbished school you like. If other people are still churning out carbon, you're still vulnerable.
But do you think Climate Action Week is actually generating these community contacts, the cross-collaboration, the awareness, the lesson learning, the stories which can be told about success and maybe where things didn't work out how you've got to back off and then move forward in order to achieve something. Is it creating a new confidence to at least discuss many of these issues?
Well, that's the hope. And we actually put a lot of time in before London Climate Action Week to bring sectors together. So we have a group of people who convene sectors. So, for example, around law.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And it's so one of the ones that we did this year with a group of other organisations, Red Cross, Red Crescent, IAD, is look at climate and development. There was a big ministerial in March the UK held saying, with developing countries saying, we're going to put your issues on the agenda for Glasgow and the G7 and the G20. We've reconvened developing countries this week to say, how's it going? Has it worked? If not, what do we need to do more? How do we put pressure on the UK government and other developed countries to do their bit to protect people in developing countries? So that's exactly that kind of grit to say, promises are fine, but delivery, what's matter? How do we come back? And I think next year, again, we're going to come back next year in person and hopefully still with the global reach we've built in the last 2 years. This year, we've got connections in US, Africa, Asia, China, India, and say delivery, delivery, delivery. We're going to get lots of targets announced this year. We need some action next year. So again, I feel every year we're trying to push it a that bit further, get that much stronger, and really looking for people, other stakeholders to come forward and say, how can I use this platform to really make a difference outside my usual networks? Because that's the great thing we have here. We've got all the networks in one place. It's low cost to bring people together. Use it. We don't own it as E3G. We're providing a platform for others to drive forward, like the Climate Innovation Forum that's growing from 300 people to 10,000 people in 3 years, which is an amazing success.
One of the things which has been very clear here, Mark Carney was sitting here yesterday, Noel Quinn, the Group Chief Executive of HSBC, was sitting where you're sitting. We've had pension providers, we've had asset managers, we've had TCFD, we've had a large number of people contributing, but all of them are saying there's a real urgency now about this. And we're in danger of still not understanding the urgency. And we've got John Kerry joining us live tomorrow. And he's already said this week, this is now becoming like a wartime because of the scale of what is needed. Is that being reflected in what you're seeing now in Climate Action Week?
Yes, but more from the bottom up, from the top down. So, for example, we've had really interesting work from the centre of London on what London needs to do to get net zero. We've got an event tomorrow, I think it is, with all the cities in the UK going, here's our investment plan, we need to go net zero. So go look at all the things they need to invest in. They're presenting that to government and to the UK Infrastructure Bank and going, okay, bring us the money. We don't have the money at the moment to do that. So I feel there is a disconnect between, in a sense, the top-down plans and finance, which is out there, and the bottom-up needs. And building that chain, whether it's in London or in the UK or globally, is the big challenge. Because again, and that's why you talk to finance, they say there's no projects. You talk to cities, they say there's no money. This is a system that's broken, and that's what we've got to weave together.
Are you getting a feeling that the easy stuff has been done? Now there's the real difficulty of the really tough stuff, which has got to be done. And I think you've said delivery, delivery, delivery.
Yeah, it's like in the UK. UK is the best G7 performing country in cutting emissions because we turned off a load of old coal power stations and replaced them with offshore wind. The rest of the economy hasn't decarbonised at all. We've got to move to change our heating, our food, our industry, our transport. Same for most other big developed countries. The easy work has mainly been done. Luckily, all the technology is a lot cheaper than we thought. It's not about cost, it's about reorganising ourselves. And that requires people to talk to other people, politically, economically, institutionally, and change what they do. And as you know, the hardest thing is to get people to change. Because doing what you did last year is the easiest thing possible. However, it's the riskiest thing possible now.
So Jeopardy is under pressure at the moment. What happens next? Because in the end, the public need to be informed as well. There's a lot of criticism of the government for not really transmitting any clarity about what people need to do, not by 2050, but by 2028, 2027, with their gas boilers, etc., etc.
Yeah, and if you look at the polling, you realise people, there's massive blind spots. They don't understand the food they eat is a huge amount of their emissions. They think it's all companies' fault, not realising that it's their own emissions. So there's a huge public engagement process. Obviously, the last 2 years have been very hard. London Climate Action Week was set up to engage Londoners, and more broadly, we work with museums and art galleries and musicians and restaurateurs to try and get that message out. And hopefully next year, we'll be able to do that again and really bring people from way outside the kind of climate professionals bubble in. Because unless like, to be honest, things like sexism or racism, everybody in the UK knows it's their business to change. The politicians won't feel bold enough to change, and people won't make the changes in their own lifestyle or purchasing habits that are needed. And again, that's not just in the UK, that's global. But we think London and UK overall has a real role to play to show how it's done, so others find it easier to build that kind of social consensus or social contract over how we make this change, because it's so fundamental. Unless we treat it as a social political project, not just a bit of technology, we're never going to do it at the pace we need.
You look very relaxed, given the scale of the challenge you're facing. Nick Mabey, thank you very much indeed for coming in, and we're delighted that Climate Action is contributing in the way that you need to keep moving it forward, to increase the acceleration, to increase the multiplying, getting voices to hear each other.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an amazing forum, and it's doing exactly what we wanted London Climate Action Week to do: ask the hard questions, push for more action, join people up and ask why they're not doing more.
And Nigel Topping said an hour ago on here that, to me, an hour ago, he said Glasgow is going to happen.
Yeah, Glasgow is going to happen. What Glasgow will happen, however, is a different question.
He says he's going there tomorrow. Nick Mabey, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck. Right. Nick Mabey, who is running London Climate Action Week, it's incredibly ambitious, and we're delighted to be part of it.